I don't think we've ever seen, a 2 to 10x increase in demand combined with a halving in supply in a scarce, desirable asset that people want to hold for a long period of time. So I think we're expecting 2024 is going to be a major bull run for the asset class. We just don't know how far the asset's going to run at this point.
As we've said many times before, 2024 will bring with it some of the biggest changes, not just to macro, not just to crypto, but across the world. We will see more changes to the way the world works than possibly any year in history. And that is because of 4 major themes that we're going to be outlining for you here so that you understand what is so important about the next year in the world of cryptocurrency. So this video, in tandem with my ultimate 2024 crypto portfolio video, which I published just a few days ago, will be some of the most important work I do here on this channel. And if you're excited about what I'm going to outline for you today, which are the most important trends that will emerge in the next year in cryptocurrency, then smash that like button and subscribe with the bell notification on so that you can get these videos before the herd. In October, I did a video going over my approach to crypto gaming investing. That video now has over 200,000 views, and in my opinion will stand the test of time throughout this cycle, helping people get ahead and stay ahead of the most important movements in the market. Again, I am just a human and I'm doing my best here, so occasionally I will be wrong. But let's just say 2023 has been a great year here on the channel. I'm very proud of the work I've done. But who really cares about 2023 now? Let's get on to the actual important stuff. The point of this channel is really simple. I try to explain the most important information that you need to swim around in the deep end of the crypto pool, or the shallow end, or the sort of middle deep transitional part. You decide where you want to swim. My point is that I'm trying to equip the audience with the actual knowledge to get ahead and stay ahead, or really just to not get completely wrecked by crypto and in turn hopefully benefit tremendously. So if you guys appreciate that, make sure to share these videos. Today we're going to be going over the trends that will define the next year and the coins that I'm going to discuss within those trends. I believe that this audience will benefit disproportionately to others. First and foremost, the trend that you must understand that will define the next year is politics. You see, politics actually define everything in our world, including the economy and how money works. You see, if it wasn't so politically popular to print money to save the economy from dramatic downturns or to finance things that people in power want to see happen, well, we wouldn't be in this inflationary, crazy cycle that we're in. You wouldn't need a finance degree to protect and provide for your family. You could just do a normal job like cutting hair or fixing toilets or whatever, and you'd probably be able to make ends meet. Because we live in the hyperinflationary fiat system, which allows governments to print money to achieve their objectives, it's really important that you understand the political landscape, which is of course why 2024 is set to be one of the most important years, not just in the United States, but in the history of the world. You see, 2024 will actually have the highest number of elections since the mind virus of the nation state infected our collective consciousness a few hundred years ago. Any politician who wants to get reelected needs to give the goodies to the people. For rich asset holders, give them loose financial conditions by encouraging central banks to print money. For the poor, give them handouts to cover the rising cost of food and energy, which is a direct result of the policies that favor the asset rich. For the middle class, give them democracy. Tell them to pay their taxes, bend over, and be glad they got a vote. With this in mind, it makes no sense for a politician seeking re-election to stop the fiat debasement party. The votes for those who benefit from fiat debasement and inflation-linked handouts will still outweigh the votes from those who suffer. As a result, the printing will surge in every democracy globally in 2024. But I guess you're wondering, Elliot, what's going on? Democracy globally, the most elections ever. What's the deal? I get most of my news from TikTok. Help me understand this. Well, to help you understand this, let's venture outside the crypto bubble and talk about democracy globally. You see, 2024's elections are actually taking place in more than half of the population of the world's so-called democracies. Check this out. Next year, countries with more than half the world's populations will hold elections, as The Economist noted. More than 4 billion people live in the countries that will be voting. We have tensions over in Taiwan, which is of course under the thumb of China. It's the semiconductor capital of the world. They have an election in January. We have Russia, and apparently Putin is leaving nothing to chance. We have India in April and May, the world's most populous nation, at a crossroads here. And apparently the table stakes are high, as some would like to turn India into a Hindu theocratic nation. Interesting. Again, I'm no expert in Indian politics, but I can tell you that in any nation that controls its own fiat currency, especially one of the major nations like India, well, you can believe that there's always a better sentiment when people are getting handouts of some sort in some fashion. And I would expect whoever's running India to do whatever they could to stay in power. We also have the European Parliament, which is trying to fight off a huge move, not just to the right, but to the hard right. The rise of a more radical right-leaning political force in Europe has been a significant story over the last 10 years, and this election is yet another installment in that battle for the future of Europe. And finally, as we all know, the old Donald is back on the ballot. And this time, even though 2016 really felt like people were fighting for their lives, like the spirit and the soul of the United States was on the ballot, you really get a sense of desperation out of the political left in the United States. We even saw recently Colorado removing Trump from the ballot based on a ruling from the Colorado Supreme Court saying that he was disqualified for January 6th. Well, we know something for sure. The recent war in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine has seen a huge drop in support for Biden based on his handling of the war. Young people do not like what he's done. His poll numbers are plummeting fast. And what we're seeing now is a clear shift as recent as mid-December, with Biden trying to push his economic record, touting stock market gains as signs that Bidenomics is actually working. So it's not just an election year. It's an election year where the left views a return to power of Donald Trump as an apocalyptic scenario, one that they must overcome, no matter what they must do to accomplish it. And most certainly, sentiment around the war has been a huge hindrance to an already tight polling battle. You can imagine that they will turn to the one trick they know that they can control beyond any other, which is, of course, firing up the printing press. Now, of course, if you look at all reserve currencies versus the price of gold over hundreds of years, they all go to zero. The question is just, how fast are they going to go to zero? And in pivotal years where we print a lot of money, well, the answer is faster than in others. Now, what you see behind me is an article called Expression by Arthur Hayes. Now, Arthur Hayes has been one of the most forward-looking minds in anticipating exactly how to invest around this rising interest rate phenomenon and all of the stuff that's happened on a macro level in the economy lately. He shows that if you anticipate that there will be debasement of fiat currency, which is what this is all about, that there is absolutely no trade that expresses that desire to bet on that more than Bitcoin or crypto as a whole. Obviously, we help you find stuff beyond Bitcoin that makes even more money when the debasement is kicking into gear, and we'll talk about that later in the episode. Since the middle of the year, Joe Biden's Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, has been literally firehosing the economy with more money, which is plain as day to see in this US dollar liquidity index. So I don't want to hear mumbo jumbo about the Fed hiking rates, about the M2 money supply, or anything else. Net, the economy has way more money drifting around than it had a few months ago. And this all started with the blank check they wrote to bail out the banks in March, which was my signal to flip bullish in our beloved crypto land. I know this is long-winded, but it's really important you realize the story of 2024 and the elections taking place this year is not limited to the United States. And in fact, the success of crypto as an asset class, each and every time it does this, attracts not just local, but global popularity. Across the world, people want access to things that can preserve or multiply their wealth. It's not really hard to understand why. And so in a year where Bitcoin is set to grow dramatically, in an election year, in a year where they must simply fire up the printing presses, not just here in the United States, but in Russia, in India, in many other of the dominant nations globally, you're going to see global expansion in liquidity from all corners of the world. And in a world where Bitcoin and crypto are pumping, you better believe that any politician that says you can't get access to this life-changing opportunity is going to be far less popular. And so is it a coincidence that on Christmas, we hear that Democrats are starting to turn on Biden SEC chair over increased regulation, calling Gensler out as a politician masquerading as a regulator? Crypto is on the verge of becoming a partisan issue, with the liberal side effectively calling it a vehicle for money laundering or terrorism or something like that, all of which has not been backed up by evidence. We do know for a fact, however, that the largest vehicle used to finance terrorism for money laundering of all sorts is, of course, the US dollar. Of course, we all know that assets aren't bad. People who are bad use all kinds of assets, and their favorite one of all time is the US dollar. Let's get that absolutely clear. So as we transition now from elections, which of course involves that piece of news I just brought up to you, we're going to start talking about the ETF. This is no longer a rumor. This is a stone cold fact. And we just got word that one of the largest ETF issuers had their chairman, Barry Silbert, actually resign. And this is Grayscale, the company that won the lawsuit against the SEC to actually create this spot Bitcoin ETF. We owe so much to Grayscale. And of course, its chairman, Barry Silbert, did a lot of no-nos throughout the last cycle. He even had this famous tweet where he said, there is a daisy chain of borrowers and lenders in the crypto space, most well capitalized, but some are not. Lots of leverage still in the ecosystem, including some non-obvious places. Important to understand counterparty risk and where the weak links in the chain. Well, it turns out that Grayscale itself was a weak link in the chain, and it ended up owing Gemini and other partners billions of dollars. This led to a ton of speculation as to how big the hole in the balance sheet was, but suffice it to say, old Barry has committed enough sins that he, along with CZ, SBF, Do Kwon, Alex Mashinsky, collectively known as the main character villain arcs of the crypto space of the last bull run, well, they've been taken out like yesterday's garbage. Now it feels, especially with this news about Barry resigning, especially as we hear that the SEC set a deadline for ETF updates as December the 29th, effectively meaning, hey, look, if you want to be part of this first batch, you need to have this done. Whatever they're asking, you need to make those changes and updates by December 29th. And that really feels as though they have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted for a launch of a Bitcoin ETF in early January. So with the knowledge that the ETF is more or less coming, with the knowledge that this is an election year, not just any election year, but potentially the most important election year as it pertains to markets that we have seen or maybe will see for significant amounts of time, talking about decades and decades. Well, this, my friends, is a cocktail for a massive run towards Bitcoin. But it's also a mixture that might just result in crypto becoming a major issue in the 2024 election, which I believe on the whole is going to be extremely bullish for crypto holders. So there you go. Trend 1 is elections and trend 2 is a Bitcoin ETF. But the reality is that the legal basis that Grayscale used, the existence of a Bitcoin futures ETF, well, that was how they forced a court to rule that the SEC must create a Bitcoin spot ETF. Guess what asset also has a futures ETF? Well, you'd be right if you guessed Ethereum. That means that legally, from the same legal basis, there is no way that the SEC can prevent an Ethereum spot ETF. Now, of course, they will do their best to delay and deny as much as they can, like they have the Bitcoin ETF. But the Bitcoin ETF, after it runs its course, will allow little brother Ethereum to have, in my opinion, a much more expedited path to market. The SEC does not want to lose another embarrassing court case, effectively blocking an ETF that legally should be able to be created. So they will not do it. So when we talk about the ETF narrative, after the Bitcoin ETF is approved, we'll very quickly see the trend shift to an Ethereum ETF. Now, I know what you're saying. Ethereum is currently the laughingstock of the crypto world because it simply has not performed, certainly not on the level of things like Solana, which of course we've been allocated to, and we're one of the earliest channels talking about Solana in the depths of the bear market. But more on that in a second, because Solana has everything to do with trend number 4. But right now, we're going to talk about trend number 3, which is Ethereum the laggard and the Ethereum ETF. Call it trend 2.5. I don't really care. What I want you to take note of is this. Look at Ethereum from the past bear market. This is the 2018 top or the 2017 top. It's like January 2018. You could see that it didn't really get going here until December. You can see that it broke out here pretty much the beginning of January 2021. Really, just call it January 1st, 2021. You can see that there is this big breakout where Ethereum finally gets over its lows and has this big explosive day. Really, this was in January 2021. So if you look at that, you could say, wow, it had this explosive run here where it finally got out of this, consolidation range. You could say it broke out here, but it wasn't really a big run, right? Like these were slow gains where it made its way up from 400 up to 600 very, very slowly. Remember, the prior high was 1400. So even at 600, it was less than half of its prior all-time high. Less than half of its prior all-time high. I wonder what's a good correlation for that price today. Well, let's go ahead and take a look here. We have a prior all-time high. It's 48.74. We could just call it 5,000 for easy math, but let's just call it 48.74. That would mean that the prior all-time high was about 24 and change, 2,400 and change. And wouldn't you know it, that we are sitting at about $2,200. Now let's do some fun stuff here, because what you can see here is that this level that I think marked the real breakout once Ethereum got through it on the last run is actually the same exact level that it really bounced off of here in the 2017 run. You can see that this level was really a huge amount of support. And once it broke through it, it kind of began the bull run as soon as it broke below this level, 676, whatever. This isn't super precise, and I'm not a professional chartist, all right? Just showing you this is really easy to see on a high time frame. Because once it broke through this, it really went parabolic here, just huge parabola up, and it went from about $600 all the way up pretty much nonstop to almost 5,000, right? 9x or whatever. All right, let's fast forward to this new run and let's see where we're at. What you can see here is that this place that Ethereum is currently stalled out is actually where it bounced off 1, 2, 3, and then we see it got rejected under here during the mini bear of 2021 summer. You can just see that this is a historically significant line here. Does that mean that ETH is just free to fly after this? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that we're looking at history kind of rhyming here. But I think the part that people don't quite get is the timing, because Bitcoin's been moving so much further, so much faster than Ethereum. So the real question is, January 2021, what had Bitcoin already done on the last cycle? And what you'll find is that Bitcoin, by the time Ethereum really breaks out here, was already over here. Look at this. Bitcoin was already over 1.5 times above its prior all-time high by the time Ethereum started really breaking out from its long consolidation. Let's go ahead and do some simple math here, right? Which is 30,000. We'll divide that by 20,000, prior all-time high. Gets you about 1.5, and we'll multiply it times the prior all-time high to give you a sense of what the equivalent price for Bitcoin, if history were to exactly repeat, would be by the time Ethereum really breaks out. As you can see, effectively 30,000 over 20,000 is 1.5 times 69,000. That gives you a price of over $100,000 in Bitcoin. Over 100K Bitcoin before Ethereum makes its 10x run. Maybe it's a 7x run instead of a 9x run. I don't really care. The point is, timing wise, Ethereum has always been a laggard. It was an extreme laggard on the last cycle, even though all of DeFi, all of the new coins, all of the DEXs, all of the new innovative technology that powered the last bull run was happening on Ethereum. And we're talking layer 1, and it still took until Bitcoin ripped through all-time high to really get going. So an Ethereum ETF could potentially pull forward the mojo, but it's important that you understand the timing of Ethereum's breakout will most likely be a massive laggard to Bitcoin's. However, it is almost a guarantee that Ethereum will end up with an ETF. That is not a question of if, it's a question of when, based on the legal precedent. This is a huge opportunity. We all know that Ethereum will be very desirable with its native yield and its time-tested nature over the last nearly decade. That's right, we're coming up on 10 years since the Ethereum white paper. Now that said, let's get into the real fun stuff, which is of course trend number 4, I guess, depending on how you count it, if ETFs are 2 trends. Regardless of all that, the next trend that you absolutely need to understand is of course Solana, or better yet, the next Solana. Let me explain. You see, Ethereum has always been plagued by high transaction fees, and this is how the blockchain is built. It's just not very scalable, but it's also the most trusted. People value ETH and the assets on ETH more than any other competitive chain, and there's been this Ethereum killer phenomenon for many years. That's right, you see all of these blockchains, Tron being one of the first, BSC, Arbitrum, Solana, some of these are L2s, some of these are competing L1s, but the point is the same, which is that all of them fail to compete on one very important metric. That, my friends, is volume. Without a doubt, the main reason for any developer to deploy their application, their tokens, their assets to Ethereum is the liquidity, is the volume. You cannot have the same reception on another chain that you can have on Ethereum because all the buyers are there, all the money is there. And so if you want to launch the biggest of the big NFT, gotta be ETH. If you want to launch the biggest of the big token, it's gotta be on ETH L1. That's where all the liquidity is, where you could have billions of dollars in on-chain volume for any token. It doesn't need to be listed on a centralized exchange. That is the promise that Ethereum has brought to us. That all got flipped on its head this week as Solana actually flipped Ethereum in volume. And this is the first time that it's flipped Ethereum in volume on the 24-hour, 7-day, and 30-day windows. As Ansem said, and I've been telling you to follow Ansem, he's been an incredible signal this cycle, and we'll talk a little bit about the Ansem signal in a second here. But Sol really did more DEX volume than ETH and all L2s combined in the past 24 hours. This is no longer a small trend, and this is no longer something that can be very well ignored. You see, Solana's price increase is one thing, anything can pump, but for the actual tokens and ecosystem to have more liquidity and trading volume than on ETH is the holy grail. That is the reason why developers will come to build on your chain, because there is network effect and liquidity there for their entire ecosystem to thrive. You see, up until this point, Ethereum had a complete monopoly on this. But in this last few weeks, this has changed for the first time. And whether or not this trend actually sticks or not is yet to be seen. Whether or not this Solana moment is just a fad, is a flash in the pan, is yet to be seen. However, if Solana is able to reliably bring more volume for DEXs and on-chain activity, then there is literally, and mark my words, very little reason, I'm not going to say absolutely no reason, but very little reason to deploy your ecosystem to Ethereum, where the transaction fees can be 50, 60, $100. Nobody wants to pay that much for a transaction fee. On Solana, it's literal pennies to make transactions. So people can buy $5 of a coin or $1 of a coin. Better, cheaper, faster for the first time in crypto history is actually an argument that makes sense. So as we look at Ethereum here with about $1.23 billion in volume, we see Solana with $1.447 billion in volume with 18 billion in 7 days. You can see that Ethereum is about half of the volume of Solana. And this is a monster, huge, indescribably big change, because as a developer, everyone's looking at this going, oh my God, we don't have to subject our entire community to absurd fees just to access our ecosystem. That's huge. That's absolutely monstrous. Now, of course, TVL is no comparison, with Ethereum having $28 billion in TVL, Solana with 1.5. But again, I'm just telling you that TVL is just one way to view things. Another way to view it is volume, and volume is very important to a lot of projects. This is a big deal. But it also brings in a huge other deal, which is bigger than just the Solana trend. Because if Solana can create some cracks to the narrative that Ethereum is the only place to build and launch serious big projects, the NBA level of project, well, that means that Solana can't be the only game in town. In fact, any good chain with enough community, with enough support, with enough time and market could actually mount a threat to Ethereum and could become the native blockchain of choice for the crypto ecosystem, the Amazon of crypto, if you will, even though that's a pretty bad comparison. The point is, right now, every VC, every innovation-focused investor around the world is licking their lips saying, what, my friends, is the next Solana? And that is the trend I've been trying to describe here, which is the understanding that just because something has been able to shake the monopoly that ETH has, well, it means that it's possible. It means that there is a whole bunch, maybe infinite, amounts of fiat money that will be punted at trying to dethrone Ethereum and to enshrine a new crypto protocol in what could be seen as one of the biggest battles for new value creation in the history of humanity. And so understanding that Solana got to be in this position by not just having great technology, there's a lot of good technology out there, but by having extreme price movements that will bring more people to build and to bring liquidity. You see, price movement and increase of value on the chain is a huge leading indicator of people wanting to build and put their home there. More money, more volume, more developers. It's very rare that it works the other way around. And so on a day like today, where the market is actually bathed in red, it can be a little bit easier to see what the next Solana very well might be. One of the great tips is to go to CoinGecko and to actually switch so that your currency is Bitcoin. And this allows you to see how tokens are performing compared to Bitcoin. Meaning, are they outperforming? Are they underperforming? Are they overperforming Bitcoin? The things that overperform Bitcoin by the most typically are the strongest coins in market, because all the big old whales, a lot of them started off with Bitcoin. A lot of them started off with Ethereum. So when they're outperforming Bitcoin and ETH, that's a huge sign that big whales are seeing those coins as better buys. Check this out. You can easily filter by how much coins are outperforming Bitcoin, and you can see Mina Protocol and Say. But before we get to this point, I think we should talk about a reality of crypto, which is that crypto is kind of like a high school. You can think of the coins in the high school as students, and some become a lot more popular than others. A lot of times coins will be in cliques or groups, but the main thing that you want to understand is that your opinion on what should or shouldn't be the future is less important than what the market believes the future looks like. And this early in the cycle, the market is giving you a ton of hints as to the coins that it thinks are going to crush it. So we're going to talk a lot about those. Again, we certainly weren't the only people that were talking about Solana. There are many very vocally bullish Solana accounts out there, including Ansem. And what we've seen is that it's actually pretty easy to look across some of the top traders in the space and see what coins they believe are the most important, scalable new tech, aka the next Solanas. Now, what's funny is that people tend to make shortened names for these coins that are actually multiple coins in one. Remember, last cycle we had Soluna AVAX. That was Solana, Luna, and AVAX. Those were the three dominant layer one blockchains that went like a bazillion X last cycle. If you were in those, you made crazy money. Of course, if you sold, we all know that those ones imploded pretty hard from the top. However, a lot of people made life-changing money. This time, people were joking that the new one is Incel, which is Injective and Celestia, aka INJ and Tia. But now, based on today's strength, people are calling it Sena, which is, Mina and Say. You're seeing all kinds of tweets from top accounts about Say, about Mina, like this. And the point is, it's not hard to see why when these coins are performing so well compared to Bitcoin, especially on a day where a lot of stuff is neutral or red. So when it comes to finding the next Solana, days that are red days, kind of like today, are very helpful in helping you understand strength. You want to see what coins the market loves the most this early in the cycle before retail money comes. Because if they're strong now, they're going to continue to be strong once retail money starts to see them up at the top of the charts. Retail loves to buy green. And so stuff that continues to pump hard will probably continue to pump hard once retail comes in. That's just how these markets work. You also need to understand the big accounts when you see collaboration across them. Well, that could mean that they all agree that certain coins are meant to be leaders. And just to save you some pain here, I did this 38 coins list. And in that, I talked about Solana. I talked about Avalanche. A lot of people like Near. It's not in my portfolio, but a lot of people like it. We have Injective, has been an absolute killer on the charts. Obviously, Immutables in the gaming category. And now adding to the mix, we have Mina and Say. So the crazy next Solana narrative currently has these contenders, in my opinion. You have Say as of today, you have Injective, Celestia, you have Mina, and to be honest, there's several others that could be in this category, but my point is very simple, that finding the next Solana is a very lucrative chase, and this will be the thing that almost every VC with half a brain cell will be trying to chase with their fund's liquidity throughout 2024. It'll get even crazier after Bitcoin makes new all-time highs. But again, this hunt for the next Solana is going to be the major trend because what Solana's managed to achieve. And again, I personally don't think this is the end of the cycle for Solana, but instead an astoundingly bullish start for what will be a wild and historic cycle for Solana. Again, you could see in June, I was predicting an $800 Solana. At the time, everyone was calling me crazy. Doesn't seem that crazy now. Really simple math, 100x off the low. That's what Cardano did last cycle. I think it's totally possible. The point is that everyone's going to be extremely excited to find the next Solana, and that will be a trend that dominates this entire market cycle. And what Solana's done has probably woken up a significant amount of risk that would not have otherwise been deployed to these alternative ETH killers if not for what Solana has accomplished so early in this new cycle. It's a brave new day, and what Solana did, I believe, is extremely bullish for the entire ecosystem. But I don't think it takes away from the fact that ETH will eventually have its day, and that you should understand that the timing of the ETH run will most likely create a total reversion in this chart here, which is NFTs, the interest over time. Again, this is at or near the lowest it's been since the last run. Now, I'm not calling NFTs a mega trend like I did in 2020, looking at 2021. That was one of my best calls ever. I called NFTs and gaming as two of my three mega trends for 2021. Thank God I was wrong about CBDCs being a trend that would take over in 2021. We instead got NFT and gaming bull runs that would make even the most degenerate bull market enjoyer blush. But remember, as ETH explodes in value, so too will a lot of the NFTs on Ethereum. The desire to trade in Ethereum on Ethereum will once again be back in vogue, and you just need to understand the timing of that will most likely happen once Bitcoin really gets its legs under it. And final word here on Say, you can see I had never been to the website before today. I had never researched it before today, but the entire timeline was talking about it as the next up to Solana. You know, that's what people are saying. It's the next up to Solana. This isn't my opinion, but it's not that hard to spot things that are popular in our little crypto high school and then to say, I'm going to bet on this and take a calculated bet on this before it gets too saturated, because if it is the next Solana, then there's probably 100x in my future. But don't quote me on that. Now, before I go on any further, one of the main things that you need to do to prepare for 2024, if you have not already, is to make sure that you are using a VPN. This is utter basics. If you want to be living in crypto land, where you own your own assets, where people know that you own your own assets, where you visit websites that are crypto related from your home IP address, that is simply a no-no in the modern crypto age. In 2023, I was the victim of a hack, and ever since then, I've been extremely crazy about cybersecurity. And a crazy part about that journey is learning that one of the cheapest products in the world, a VPN, can be one of the most useful in preventing against an attack on you, be it data leakage, man-in-the-middle attacks, and other ways that bad actors can get a hold of your information. As I've said many times before, there are tons of mistakes you can be forgiven for. All of the veterans even make mistakes here in crypto land, but not having a VPN and hiding your IP address is not a mistake that you'll be forgiven for. You can get safer here with just a few clicks. If you don't have one already, make sure you download NordVPN with my link in the description. And I'd like to thank NordVPN for sponsoring this video. And with that said, let's get back to the 4 mega trends of 2024. Now for the final segment, which is of course gaming and AI. These are the two sectors that are most likely, in my opinion, to be things that you can easily front run the biggest surge of liquidity and attention. Attention and liquidity are the two things that mean the most for moving markets here in crypto land. Now, when we think of what in the outside world will cause attention and liquidity, there are only two possible answers that I believe. And I will talk again about two other things that I see as massive distractions. Going back to the Arthur Hayes article, I was actually excited to see that he agrees with me here because I've been bearish on real world assets on the blockchain for a while. Maybe it'll happen one day, but the reality is that if you actually think that you're getting a real world asset on the blockchain, what it means is that effectively you need a legal framework with intermediaries. You need someone to put that asset into an SPV, a special purpose legal entity that is owned by the token and then managed by some intermediary. So you always with real world assets have this intermediary counterparty risk. You simply cannot have the true benefits of decentralization and permissionlessness with real world assets. I think that this narrative for me is overhyped, and if it does catch some steam, I will not personally be the one jumping in. Though everybody does want to trade and buy real estate on Ethereum. That seems interesting to them, but just know it's not nearly as scalable as anything else. Specifically, AI and gaming are infinitely scalable without any intermediaries. Whereas the real world asset thing to me has a massive ceiling on it, and it will be really hard for me to see it get going anytime in the next few years, maybe sometime in the 2030s. It would make more sense. The other thing people are making a big deal of here, and it's part of the RWA thing, is debt. And this is because people think that by putting treasuries on the blockchain, getting that 5% government yield on the blockchain, that this is somehow a revolution. In my opinion, it is not, and the opportunities by seeking out risk for your assets instead of guaranteed debt yield are significantly higher, and this will once again fall on deaf ears over time once the bull run really gets going, because making 5% over a year just is silly to be chasing here in crypto land when you have such a better opportunity simply buying Bitcoin. So when it comes to gaming, as you guys well know, I am obsessed with gaming, and I've been doing a constant deep dive on gaming and the gaming tokens. I have a gaming investment Bible I put out a few months ago. I will link it here in the description, and I've done an extreme amount of digging into gaming coins that I think are going to do well in the next cycle. That said, I will continue to do this, and I aim to make this the indisputable #1 stop for gaming content here in crypto land, and I have some very exciting initiatives coming up for that. So stay tuned and make sure you have the bell notification on here, as well as on my Twitter, as well as on the Super_DAO Twitter. Make sure you have post notifications turned on here. But if you're itching for some more gaming content, just know that my thesis is very simple, that there is not just one, not just 10, but hundreds of games coming to the blockchain over the next 24 months. That means that there will be hundreds of opportunities to attract new audiences in a fun and friction-free way to crypto land. My bet is that at least one of these teams is going to have some serious success, and that we will see a new era of the internet where crypto and gaming begin their forever enmeshment in a beautiful and harmonious marriage. And the second framework is that AI, the most disruptive technology of the last 10 years, since of course the creation of blockchain, will continue to make insane headlines and captivate the attention of the masses. Every time this happens, the AI sector goes bananas. And I heard today that everyone is super bullish on Render. Render, to me, being the #1 AI coin is interesting. I personally think that it will be replaced at some point in the cycle. And my biggest holding is Akash. I've said this many times. I actually run a validator. So if you want to actually stake to the Akash network, you can stake to the EllioTrades new validator. If you were staking to my old one, please stake to my new one. I've been a long-term holder of Akash now for years, and I'm very bullish on their concept of effectively the Airbnb for compute. Compute is in extremely short supply, so being able to rent out GPU compute power and do so in a fully open source way, Akash is an incredible project in my opinion, and I've been holding for years. I'm going to continue to hold through this cycle and see what happens. But to be clear, the AI sector here has only $10 billion in market cap. For one of the most impactful technologies in the world coming onto the blockchain, it is unthinkable for me that there will not be a top 20 coin that is an AI coin, potentially even a top 10. It's also unthinkable to me that this won't multiply dramatically over the course of this bull run. AI is bound to make astronomical moves up in the charts and market cap size. The same, of course, can be said of gaming. The total gaming market cap is about 20 billion. In my opinion, looking at gaming as a whole, it does about $200 billion in transaction volume each year. And I believe that things coming on the blockchain will make them 10 times more valuable, and people will actually transact a significantly higher amount of money knowing that they have true ownership over these items. So my mental model is a $5 to $10 trillion gaming market within the next 10 years. I think that could come a lot sooner, and I believe that at least $1 trillion in gaming market cap is something that should be happening here before 2030. Long story short, gaming and AI are where I see the most transformative gains coming because the attention and liquidity will be unmatched. However, like I've said many times before, smart contracts platforms, layer ones, Ethereum killers, whatever you call them, these have always been the big battle for VC liquidity, and this cycle will be no different. And with Solana making a real challenge to Ethereum's monopoly on on-chain activity and on-chain transaction volume, well, this cycle is set to get very, very spicy with a ton more Ethereum killers and potentially even Solana killers coming to market. So what should you do now to prepare for 2024? I believe that understanding the context of why 2024 is a year unlike any other, with elections and ETFs bringing dramatic and exponential amounts of demand to the crypto ecosystem in a year where the Bitcoin supply is getting cut in half in its emissions, it's a very strong recipe for massive appreciation of the king asset of crypto. But beyond that, we have gaming, AI, and the hunt for the next Solana, or actually Solana as the Ethereum killer. Those three categories are going to be absolutely astronomically popular, and you don't need to actually follow this channel. What you need to do is take stock of everything that you've seen over the course of 2023. Understand which sources you first learned of winning coins from, which signs of confirmation, maybe signs that you ignored, are ones that you don't plan to ignore in 2024. Understand that writing down your plan is the first step to success. Which categories do you think are most important? Where are you going to spend your time? Once you learn about a coin, how are you going to establish if it's something you should buy or not? What tools are you using? What people are you following? What groups are you in? How are you establishing whether or not your decision-making framework is actually helping or hurting you? These are the things that you should be doing right now to prepare for 2024. Understand that these are the trends that I believe will govern the next year of cryptocurrency price action and excitement and development. I'm curious, what do you think? Did I miss something? Did I miss your favorite trend? Did I not cover your favorite token in my tokens list? Remember, check out my 38 token list. But again, looking at the trends I've seen over the last year, we can say that whoever actually takes the spotlight as the next Solana will be in an incredibly, incredibly good position. And having a few chips betting on that horse is probably not a bad idea. As always, there are odds that this whole thing nukes. You got to be comfortable with whatever risk you take in the market. It's on you to protect your own positions. There's a risk that things could go to absolute zero and they could go to the moon. And it's a beautiful thing that you have the opportunity to control your destiny completely and totally in this new world. As always, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it gave you some perspective on 2024 and what I believe are going to be the most important aspects of the 2024 bull run. If you enjoyed this, make sure to check out this video popping up. It's a full and exhaustive list of the coins that I'm looking forward to in 2024. And of course, we will update you as more information comes to the frame. As always, I'm EllioTrades, and I'll see you very soon on the next episode.